Welcome to Retail's Most Wanted, the show that examines the latest issues related to organized retail crime and how retailers and policymakers are fighting back against today's organized crime syndicates. I'm your host, Marty Carpenter, and coming up on today's show, we'll be joined by Sam Sabin, a cybersecurity reporter at Axios. She's Axios' sole cyber reporter, and she covers a wide range of cybersecurity issues relevant to our audience. Prior to joining Axios, Sam wrote at Politico, and she covered tech policy with Morning Consult. With her extensive background in tech and cybersecurity reporting, Sam brings valuable insights to discussions on organized retail crime and its intersections with cybersecurity threats. It's a really interesting conversation. It's coming up right after this word from our sponsors. Retail's Most Wanted is brought to you in partnership with the Attorney General Alliance, where U.S. state attorneys general collaborate on emerging legal issues and the rule of law at home and across borders. Learn more at agalliance.com. Retail's Most Wanted is brought to you in partnership with LVT, securing physical environments through intelligent automation. Learn more at lvt.com. That's lvt.com. Sam, thanks for spending some time with us. We've mentioned a little bit as we were getting warmed up here that we're kind of Axios fanboys at our shop and like it. So I want to do this. I want to do this smart brevity style. Okay. So you spoke today at NRF Protect on cybersecurity. So I kind of get the headline, but why don't you tell me one big thing from your presentation today?
Oh, you really put me on the spot. Typically,
you don't have to keep it to 12 words.
Notes and I think about this and I cut a lot of stuff to get to the final product. The thing that's coming to mind for me, one big thing, no matter the sector, every CISO is dealing with the same issue, right? They're dealing with how do I tackle the same threat day in and day out that I've been dealing with for years, but where the hackers or threat actors or whoever has just changed tactics, has just morphed it a little bit, right? The number of panels I'm in where people are still talking about ransomware, and it's been over a decade of ransomware, and all that's really changed is just extortion tactics and maybe some of the technical stuff that I am not an expert in. It's kind of wild, right? We had the CISO at Target on the panel, and he said that was like his number one issue. It's not so much AI, it is still ransomware. And then we had another CISO at Living Spaces who talked a lot about passwords and identity protection, all things we've been talking about for so long. So yeah.
Let's move on to the second part of a Smart Brevity interview. That's why it matters. Can you give me some context from what your reporting has taught you over the last couple of years? Help contextualize how businesses are looking at this as a problem. Like, why is it such a big problem for them? And give us an idea of the magnitude.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard to mark the magnitude. In part, I'm going to fumble all the numbers and the number of attacks, right? But, it would be probably why it matters. It's just a problem that plagues companies, right? And in some cases, they lose online services for several days. If we're talking about retailers specifically, we can broaden that out. Every week there's a new hospital attack that I'm looking at. I don't even have the bandwidth to cover every single hospital attack these days, which is kind of wild to think about, considering that can lead to ambulances not being able to get people to the facility in time or having to divert to a different hospital, schools that have to cancel classes. It has a real consumer and everyday American impact, and it is still something that we struggle to talk about for whatever reason. It is plagued. I'm sure if I brought this up at dinner, which I try not to that often, people would go eyes glazed over, get numb because, oh, you're just telling me I have to change my password, or like, oh, there's nothing I can do about this. And so the why it matters is just we're trying to figure out how to get through this apathy and actually move and make changes and get people, maybe your CEO, maybe your CFO, to invest more in cybersecurity so that we can kind of cut down on the impact on consumers and just cut down the number of data breaches, ransomware, so on and so forth. Yeah.
Ransomware is one of those that's a little bit easier to quantify because you can say, hey, you got hit, they're asking for this amount of money, here's what it takes you, and maybe some lost productivity to get back there. But when you talk about like a hospital, there are some of those costs that suddenly you can't put a dollar amount on, right? Like a hospital gets into a critical position. If that compromises at any level care for someone, that can have like an irreplaceable type of loss there, like a loss of life or a loss of sort of recovery time or something along those lines. So it gets to be really hard to quantify, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it can be, right? Unless you have those headline grabbing incidents. I would actually maybe argue that it's a little bit harder if you are a small business or even a medium sized business who's reading about this going, oh, that's that other organization. They got hit by ransomware. I won't be.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for people to fully understand the true impact it can have on a business unless they've experienced it themselves, right? They hear like, oh, your website went down. Okay, well, what does that actually mean? It means you're not getting sales. You're not getting access to your email, which means you can't email your suppliers anymore, which means like if there are customer service requests that you need to be making or customers are emailing you about something, there's no way to get in contact with you. It's things like that then get kind of tricky to quantify, or people just think, oh, that's a later problem that I have a limited budget and I need to put this money into hiring instead for marketing people so that people know I even exist before I invest in security and password managers, right? So it's a bit difficult to quantify. I feel like a hospital, I would hope, knows about it. Of course, they are also resource constrained, especially in rural areas. And so it's more of like trying to quantify it so that people prioritize it, right? And know that it's important. It's almost like going to the dentist.
Yeah.
I kind of think of it that way. So many people go, oh, I know I need to go in for my cleaning, but I'll do that later.
Yeah.
And then they go in later and they have like 7 cavities and they need to get a root canal. And they're like, oh no, maybe I would have had far fewer cavities if I had actually gone when I needed to go.
Yeah.
And so it's more of like rejiggering the prioritizing. Yeah.
We talk a lot on this podcast about organized retail crime, and one of the things that jumps out to me in a lot of these conversations is the fact that don't think of it as just organized retail crime. That's part of a larger crime syndicate where they are using retail theft to fund drug trafficking, human trafficking. And I had never really thought about this until something you just said a minute ago, that I wonder to what extent do we think of cybersecurity criminals as like a guy in a hoodie in a dark room, or maybe even in his parents' basement, or a nation state that's trying to cause harm to the United States. But do we have any indication that there's some kind of connection between a crime group that does organized retail crime, human trafficking, drug theft, and cyber crime? Or are we sort of fortunate, and I shouldn't have even said that out loud and given someone the idea?
No, I think there is some crossover, and this might be where me being more of a general cybersecurity expert is going to fail me here. But even in some of the panels, right, I always hear a lot about gift card scams. I think about them in terms of people texting you, just trying to go get you to get a gift card and send it back so that someone overseas can use it. It seems primarily in China, but I could be missing a few countries there. But even some of those end up feeding into romance scams, which I didn't think about. I thought about that purely as cryptocurrency-based transactions. And it seems there's so much overlap in the cybercriminal world. And then, of course, in different countries, there's overlap between maybe who is a ransomware actor and who is maybe doing smuggling or something of that nature. I don't think... it feels weird to think about it this way, but there probably are just like generalist criminals out there who like have multiple gigs and are doing multiple things, or there are gangs that are like have different revenue streams, right? They are also a business. So they also have to think through their own longevity, which is a weird, abnormal way to think about this, unless you are people like us who think about cybersecurity all the time. And that's like something I have to do a reality check with all the time. Yeah.
We used to think about businesses as brick and mortar businesses and online businesses, but I think today you may be an exclusively online business like Amazon, although Amazon has had some brick and mortar steps into that foray. But everyone is basically an online retailer at this point if you're in that retail game. What challenges do you see that maybe cross the border, whether you're like, what are you hearing from business leaders who say, hey, maybe I'm a brick and mortar person who has to do online sales as well, or maybe I'm solely online, but what are the challenges that they all face regardless of which of those two camps they fall into?
Yeah, I think 2 things immediately came to mind, and I'm sure there's so many more than that. Actually, I just thought of a third. So there are definitely more than that. The first one, I think a lot about identity protection, right? How do you, even if you are someone who's in a physical location, you have to log into your system some way, some shape and form. That is something that exists even beyond just like being in e-commerce. Like maybe you have remote workers elsewhere. You also have physical locations to have access to these systems, and maybe it's not as big anymore, but there's always a concern that like, oh, someone can put a USB in your computer and infect you with malware, et cetera, steal your passwords, your information, things like that. Okay. The other one that comes to mind is I'm thinking a lot about like, and this gets back to your question about, you know, the cyber criminal gangs who maybe are doing a bit of online stuff and in person. I've heard so much about like gift card tampering, so much about just how do you monitor people who are coming in. Gift cards are like take so many different forms in their scams, right? It's you can have someone go in, buy a gift card. It seems innocuous, right? Like a little old lady's just coming in, buying her gift card. Maybe it's for her grandchild. She's going to ship it out.
Yeah.
You don't want to question them. And then I was listening to a presentation from Walmart earlier. Back at Walmart headquarters, they might look at that serial number and realize, oh, for whatever reason, the gift card that this woman bought in our store in Bentonville is now being used in a transaction in China, and that seems weird because she just bought it 10 minutes ago, and there's no way that this could have really like taken off that way. And I think that's a huge issue for those who maybe it's more than just gift cards. Maybe it's other products that are shipped out various places, and having that capacity to it can exist in e-commerce, et cetera. There's so much more that I can ramble on about.
The gift card one is an interesting one to me because I've always thought like I think the reason that it's still a thing that you go buy a physical card so you can put it in an envelope and send it to someone or give it to someone. It's probably not as safe to mail it, but
just texting it.
But it would seem like that's sort of old school. Like that's almost like you're a journalist. We don't really print things on newspaper as much anymore because it's more efficient to send it. And I wonder if either A, it's safer to do it just by, hey, just go and rather than buy a Visa gift card, go to Visa's website, buy a certain credit, and have Visa securely send it to whichever email you send, and then boom. But I wonder if that opens up a whole extra layer or multiple layers of security problems for Visa, and so it's easier for them to print cards. So I don't know if we're holding on to that current card system because we like to put a card inside a birthday card and give it to someone, or if it really is somehow more secure. It seems like it could be more secure the other way.
I think it can be. That's an interesting question. I think part of it is accessibility, right? Not everyone has access to the internet. Not every retailer accepts online gift cards, or maybe you just want to, in these cases, it was a lot of people who wanted like Apple gift cards so that they can, get that gift card number, then they can buy an iPad and resell it in their country for a higher profit and do things like that. So maybe it's just, certain gift cards don't, I think what the real answer is I think enterprises are better at protecting this online than they are in person and at like the physical brick and mortar store, right? Something that I'm just now remembering is how Walmart has made it so that any gift card that they have can't really operate outside of the U.S., right? I would have to imagine that if someone in China, Russia, somewhere else that maybe also has limited access to VPNs and it's harder to hide where they're located, I would have to imagine if they got a gift card number, they put it in for a certain retailer, and maybe if Visa, I don't know if Visa does this, but maybe they put it in, it's not going to work, right? And so I actually think that a lot of retailers are probably savvier on the online side of things, and gift card providers, and there are just so many different layers to gift cards too.
It's a complex thing.
It's so hard.
For sure.
So I think that on the online space, they're a lot savvier at this. I just have to imagine it's accessibility. Like people just still want a physical card. I mean, there's a reason I still carry my credit cards instead of using Apple Pay everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So,
and for me, it's still that just every so often you get somewhere that doesn't take it, and so you got to have it until we get to full. The full embracing of it, that you just know everywhere I go I can use it, then you can go the more secure route.
And I think it's nice, if you're sending someone a gift card as a gift, it's just nice to get the physical
nice
card
to hand
instead of an
somebody
email,
something. Yeah,
right?
I hear
So it's simple things like that I think have made them long lasting.
You talked earlier today about CSOs and the challenges they face. I'm wondering if you could identify for us some of the trends that you're maybe seeing and how they're utilizing new technologies, AI, to help them in their efforts to protect the data that they're charged with protecting.
Yeah, AI it's a tricky one. It's a question that I feel like every time I ask, either people are eager to talk about or they kind of sigh a little and go, this topic again, I can't believe it. A lot of them, from what I can tell, and of course this varies across sector, on this panel with a few retail CSOs, both of them are just experimenting right now in their teams, right? It's very similar across sectors for them, but it was a lot of looking at AI to help read threat intel alerts, right? People get bombarded with these alerts all day, every day, similar to maybe your email inbox. There's no way personally that I read every single press release that comes in through my doors. I love to pretend that I do. Actually, no, I don't. I kind of stopped pretending. But, there was a point where I was trying to be polite. It's a similar issue for security teams dealing with the number of threat reports that they get and using AI to help prioritize, what's severe, what's not. It's things like that. It's AI that can help detect malicious files on your network, like using it for defense, things like that. But a lot of it's still experimentation. And I think what I have found kind of refreshing about this conversation compared to maybe other emerging technologies that we've talked about is that there seems to be a lot of level setting in terms of how we talk about AI, right? It's less about let's just go all in, full throttle, it's going to be amazing. A lot of the conversation, especially on the panel that I just did with Target and Living Spaces, it was a lot of let's see what happens, right? Let's take a deep breath. And there was no doom and gloom in that conversation, which was nice. There was no one who thought AI is going to make the threat actors so much savvier. The way one person put it was that all AI, generative AI especially, is going to do is make the D players B players, right? And maybe that's just the name of the game, right?
Yeah.
You're already fighting the B players. It's the same playbook. So, it's a very level set, like, let's see what happens. It's almost like people are waiting to see what the cybersecurity vendors do with their products in AI before they, like, go all in and invest in this. And so, that's kind of how CISOs are really thinking through AI, and that is, like, that alongside ransomware, et cetera, are, like, the top stuff for them. Yeah.
If our audience wants to follow your coverage of this stuff, where do they find you on X? I'm still trying to get into that habit. And where do they follow you and go subscribe to your newsletter as well?
Yeah. You can follow me on X. I am like reluctantly still there. So LinkedIn is actually a little bit better, and that's not a joke. So you can just look for me. It's Sam Sabin. I work at Axios. You can also subscribe to the Codebook newsletter. That's the best way to follow my work. It comes straight to your inbox Tuesday and Friday.
They can go do that at Axios.com?
Yes, they can do that at Axios.com, or you can just Google Axios Codebook, and that's the name of the newsletter, and find it that way. And I have links across all of social media pubbing it. So come follow it. Yeah.
Well, we identified one big thing. You told us why it matters. We went deeper. That's the Axios way, smart brevity. Sam Sabin from Axios, thanks so much for taking some time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. That's it for this episode of Retail's Most Wanted. Thanks to our presenting sponsors, LVT and the Attorney General Alliance. Don't forget, hit that subscribe or follow button so you can catch each new episode. We drop a new one every 2 weeks. We're also on X, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Links to all of those are in the show notes below. Thanks for being with us, everyone. And as always, keep up the good fight.